Hi, I'm Dr. J, and welcome to 5-Minute Fridays. I have a background of a master's in human performance/applied sports science and a doctorate in sport and performance psychology. This week, our episode is going to cover tempo training as it applies to strength training. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more 5-Minute Fridays with your Dr. J. Let's start out by looking at how we can read tempo or how we write tempo to create some understanding of how to utilize this and where we can place it within our training. So tempo training is typically written as 4 digits or as 4 numbers, and each number in the sequence represents a different piece within that movement. So whether we're pulling or pushing, typically the numbers will stay the same. And so that first number is going to be our lowering or our eccentric portion of the movement. All right, and then our second number is going to be that midpoint. So it'll be once you've started the initial movement and where you stick in the midpoint. And then our third number is going to be that concentric action, all right? Typically the pushing action or the active portion of some of our pushing lifts. All right, and then our fourth number is going to be at the end of the exercise. If you're doing a squat, for example, that could be when you're standing before you initiate the next squat, or it's that reset phase where you return back to your starting point and it's before you initiate the movement again to start it all over. So now that we better understand how to read the tempo, let's look at how do we utilize that with a pushing movement, right? So if I'm initiating my squat and I've got my barbell on my back and I start to lower with our squat, that's going to be our eccentric portion, right? So I'm doing the lowering part of that movement. And say my tempo is 3, 0, 1, 0, all right? I'm looking to lower for a 3 count. So as I'm going down 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, and then once I hit the midpoint, which is our first 0, right? 3, 0, you're gonna go right into the next part of that phase. So 0 typically means we're not gonna rest or pause at any point during that part of the movement. All right, and if my third number is a 1, typically that means to be able to get up as fast as you can. So I'm gonna lower into my squat, I'm gonna take 3 seconds down on my descent, I'm gonna get to the bottom point of that squat, and then I'm gonna fire up out of the hole or from the bottom of my squat as quickly as I can. And since my fourth number and the last number is 0, we're gonna go right into that next rep. So I'm gonna do a 3 count lower. As soon as I get down there, I'm gonna fire up and I'm gonna go right into that next rep as part of that sequence. So whether I'm doing 5 reps or 8 reps, I'm gonna do all of those consecutively back to back. But I'm gonna keep in mind that I'm gonna lower for 3 seconds under control and with excellent posture as I work through this series. So then in contrast, if we're looking at a pulling movement, say I'm doing a cable row and I've got my arms extended out in front of me, I'm gonna pull that bar to my chest and then I'm gonna return back with my motion, right? This is typically considered a pulling movement. So because the angle and our point of the exercise is a little bit different, how we execute that count might be a little bit different, all right? So when we're looking at that pulling movement, that initial piece where I'm pulling back is going to be the concentric count within our tempo here. And then as I return back to my start point, that's going to be considered the eccentric part. So it's like we're trying to utilize that braking part a lot of times when we're looking at tempo to create this strength and to create these changes, right? So as I'm doing this pulling movement and say my count is still 3, 0, 1, 0, right? The eccentric part is going to be a 3-second count as I return back. All right, and then the concentric part is gonna be as quickly as I can. So if I'm pulling, I'm gonna pull back as quickly as I can under control. And then since my 0 for this midpoint is here, I'm not gonna rest at all in the midpoint. But then I'm gonna take a 3 count to return back to the start. So my 3 count will be from here where I'm in this active position as I start to extend my arms back out to returning, right? Because that motion from the pull into that controlled return is gonna be more of a braking motion. And that's usually where we consider the eccentric portion to fall. So those are a little bit of the differences between a pushing movement with our tempo and a pulling movement with our tempo. Some considerations to have as we look to apply this to our training would be, when should you use tempo training and why should you use tempo training? We're going to start out with the why, right? When we're looking at building a skill and we're looking at rehearsing and building these opportunities and building more strength, we want to be comfortable with the movement. And by slowing things down on a specific portion of the lift, that might give us an opportunity to focus on those pieces, right? So that'll give us a chance to improve that motor control, and it'll also increase the motor unit recruitment, right? So we're talking about the actual muscle fibers and getting our nervous system to innervate more of our muscle to be able to be readily available on a voluntary basis, right? We're trying to get our strength to maximize itself, right? So instead of me putting a heavy load on the bar, if I change your speed of movement, I'm going to be able to get more work with less impact on your spine per se, if we're looking at that back squat again, right? So if I'm asking you to move a little bit slower with that same weight, and I've got you on a 4 count lower, right? And then you're springing up out of the hole, now you gotta hold that bar and keep that position for 4 seconds, right? Versus where it might take you a second or a second and a half on a typical rep, right? And now I don't have to use as much weight to compress your body. So as we're looking at these benefits of the tempo training, also we're looking at when to use it based on the intent of the movement that we're utilizing. If that movement is really important to the sport that we're playing, we might be able to use this on a cycling on and off basis, right? But when we're trying new things, we don't typically want to try those new things during season, but we want to utilize them during the preseason and the off season to give us a chance to see how our athletes or how our own bodies are going to respond to that type of training, right? And then we want to look at the portion of the season that we're in. That's an important matter in it, as well as what is our overall goal of the addition of strength training for this group specifically, or for myself at this point right now, right? And so we're looking at how do we utilize that efficiently and how do we make that more beneficial so that we are getting the work that we're looking for out of the work that we are doing. No wasted effort here. So once again, our benefits for tempo training include learning and being able to control a movement better, all right, increased strength and increased motor unit recruitment, all right, and as well, options for variation within different parts of your season so that we're keeping our nervous system fresh through different approaches of working. Thank you for tuning into this 5-Minute Friday. Please join us again in a couple of weeks as we look at choking versus choking resistant athletes and what differentiates that. Once again, this is Dr. J, and as always, be refined by the grind.